In May 1942, the first battle in history fought exclusively between aircraft carriers unfolded in the South Pacific. This would become one of the most chaotic and bewildering engagements of the Pacific War. As the first true carrier versus carrier confrontation, neither side's ships would sight or fire directly on the enemy, relying instead entirely on aircraft to deliver blows. This was the Battle of the Coral Sea. Often overshadowed by the more famous Battle of Midway, Coral Sea's strategic significance was profound. Its outcome would shape the upcoming Midway operation and mark the first time the Allies successfully checked Japanese expansion in the Pacific. The backdrop of the conflict lay in Japan's ambitions. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces had rapidly advanced across Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific. Australia, largely isolated and vulnerable, was a potential target. Operation MO called for the capture of Port Moresby in New Guinea, providing a springboard to launch further operations into New Caledonia, Fiji, and Samoa. By seizing this port, Japan hoped to sever Australia's supply lines with the United States and secure dominance in the South Pacific. Air support was crucial for such an ambitious plan. Admiral Yamamoto, architect of Japan's carrier strategy, committed two of his fleet carriers, Shikaku and Zuikaku, to the operation, intending to return them quickly for the upcoming Midway offensive. Japanese planning was intricate and rigid. Chalagi, a small island near Port Moresby, was scheduled for capture on May 3, with air cover provided by the carrier striking force. Rear Admiral Godo's covering group, including a light carrier and 4 cruisers, would support the landing. Along the invasion route, seaplane bases were to be established for reconnaissance, a critical element of the plan. The invasion convoy, departing Rabaul on May 4, faced a 6-day voyage through the Jamard Passage, a stretch vulnerable to air raids from Australian land-based bombers. The carrier strike force was tasked with providing essential protection. The Japanese plan depended on flawless coordination among 5 separate groups and assumed a passive enemy. Vice Admiral Takagi expected at most 2 American carriers and believed that, with surprise on their side, his own carriers could handle them easily. But the Americans were far from passive. Thanks to U.S. Navy codebreakers, critical intelligence had been recovered from Japanese radio transmissions. Analysts were able to piece together enough information to estimate a timeline of the operation. At the time, the United States had only 5 carriers in the Pacific. Of these, 1 was under repair after a torpedo attack, 2 were returning from the Doolittle raid and unavailable, leaving only the USS Yorktown immediately ready for action. She would later be reinforced by the USS Lexington. The American plan was straightforward: remain at the edge of Japanese air coverage and strike when opportunities arose, aided by Australian and American reconnaissance aircraft. The Japanese, in contrast, relied almost entirely on land-based reconnaissance. Carrier aircraft were reserved for offensive strikes, not scouting. Seaplanes had extraordinary range up to 3,000 miles, yet gaps in intelligence persisted. Accurate reconnaissance would prove decisive in the coming days, and weather would play a critical role. Cloud cover could conceal movements, providing protection for one side while frustrating the other. Operation MO's 5 groups included 2 invasion convoys and the light carrier Shoho, which was tasked with air cover for the convoys. The primary striking force, composed of Shikaku and Zuikaku, fielded 121 aircraft under Vice Admiral Takagi, with tactical command delegated to Rear Admiral O'Hara, a veteran of naval aviation. The Americans assembled Task Force 17 under Rear Admiral Fletcher, later joined by a cruiser force under Rear Admiral Crace. Once Lexington arrived, the combined American carriers deployed 134 aircraft, tactically controlled by Rear Admiral Fitch. The preliminary phase began on May 2. Fletcher waited for Lexington to refuel, but intelligence reports indicated the Chalagi invasion was underway. Acting decisively, he moved north alone at a cautious pace, launching an early morning strike on May 4 under heavy cloud cover. The Japanese were caught completely off guard. Despite 3 separate attacks, damage was modest, and the Chalagi seaplane base resumed operations within 2 days. By May 5, Fletcher had consolidated his forces with Lexington and the cruiser group, forming an enlarged Task Force 17. His intelligence suggested the convoy would pass through Jamard Passage, but the Japanese carriers were positioned on his exposed flank. Previous delays, 2 failed attempts to ferry aircraft to Rabaul due to bad weather, had inadvertently spared Yorktown from a potential counterstrike. Takagi, refueling during Fletcher's Chalagi attack, immediately pursued but failed to intercept. On May 6, Japanese reconnaissance spotted Task Force 17. Takagi hesitated, delaying a comprehensive strike. Post-battle analysis would reveal that the Japanese had been within 70 miles of the Americans, a crucial missed opportunity. On May 7, both sides prepared for full engagement. Japanese reconnaissance swept west and south, while American forces searched north. A cruiser force under Rear Admiral Crace attempted to block Jamard Passage. Misidentification plagued Japanese searches, leading them to attack secondary targets, the oiler Neosho and destroyer Sims. Sims was destroyed. Neosho survived but would later be scuttled. The American strike, despite initial errors, inflicted severe damage on Shoho. By 11:31, Shoho was abandoned after multiple bombs and torpedoes struck, marking the first Japanese carrier lost in the war. The Japanese invasion force withdrew, leaving remaining ships to retreat north. Both sides experienced confusion and miscommunication. On May 8, Fletcher and Takagi's carriers finally faced each other directly. Cloud cover initially favored the Japanese, concealing their positions. American reconnaissance launched a 75-plane strike, while the Japanese, fielding 69 operational aircraft, prepared a counterstrike. Yorktown's dive bombers spotted the Japanese at 10:32, delaying to allow torpedo bombers to catch up. This delay enabled Zuikaku to slip under cloud cover. Yorktown and Lexington attacked Shikaku, which bore the brunt of the assault. One pilot, Lieutenant John J. Powers, performed a daring dive bombing attack that destroyed his aircraft and claimed his life. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Despite multiple attacks, Shikaku survived. Zuikaku remained operational. Lexington's condition deteriorated as fires and explosions ravaged the ship. By mid-afternoon, it was clear she could not be saved. The crew was rescued and the carrier was scuttled, taking 35 aircraft with her and resulting in 216 fatalities. Yorktown, severely diminished in aircraft numbers, withdrew. Although the battlefield remained under Japanese control, the invasion of Port Moresby was effectively halted. Operation MO ended with 77 Japanese aircraft and 1,074 personnel lost, including 90 aircrew. The Americans lost 66 aircraft, 543 personnel, 2 carriers, an oiler, and a destroyer. While Japan achieved a tactical victory in terms of tonnage, the strategic victory belonged to the United States. The first Japanese offensive since Pearl Harbor had been checked, and the threat to Australia was eliminated. Coral Sea also impacted future operations. Japanese carriers Shikaku and Zuikaku were damaged and depleted, delaying their participation in Midway. Yorktown's surviving aircraft would play a pivotal role in the next decisive battle. Coral Sea had proven that intelligence, reconnaissance, and timing could determine the outcome of naval engagements, even when the numerical balance favored one side. The battle demonstrated that, in carrier warfare, the ability to see first and strike accurately was more decisive than sheer firepower. Ultimately, the Battle of the Coral Sea was a turning point. Tactical errors, misidentifications, and weather combined with emerging intelligence capabilities to alter the course of the Pacific War. For the Japanese, it was a warning that even with surprise and superior planning, the Allies could adapt and resist. For the United States, it marked a validation of code-breaking, reconnaissance, and carrier aviation as instruments of strategic power, setting the stage for the pivotal battles yet to come.